hot button.
This away.
You know, I know these gummy worms are good. Made in the USA.
There's no way. We don't make things anymore. This is late stage capitalism.
All right, so I'm gonna paint a picture here for the.
All right.
I like how you're reading that. You didn't believe me? That's true. All right, I'm gonna paint a picture here. You ready? Close your eyes. It was the summer.
No, I don't
of
trust you.
That's fair. It was the summer of 2007. The last Harry Potter book was finally out.
Nice.
There was an impossibly good Simpsons movie in theaters somehow.
It's about to be 777, the real end of the world.
And
this
Hey
time.
There, Delilah was tearing up the pop charts, unfortunately.
Dude, fucking A.
Well, at least that song turned out all right.
All music has been worse since.
But what was going on in the wild world of video games, you asked? I heard you ask. You did.
No.
Nah, I don't care, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, while the rest of the country was suffering from the inevitable pop of the housing bubble, us soon-to-be doomed kids were enjoying an absolute fucking renaissance of amazing video game releases. Rock Band, Uncharted, Mass Effect, Assassin's Creed, fucking Bioshock, Modern Warfare, the Orange Box and Portal, all started in 2007.
Also,
Jeez.
Halo 3.
Halo 3 was also 07, yes.
That's a hell of a year.
It's a hell of a year. Those were all like new franchises that started. Well, you know, Half-Life, but that was with the new with the Wii and the PS3 and 360 all out in full force. It was a really crazy year. Except it wasn't all good in the hood, not for everyone in the industry anyway, because today we're going to talk about the great engine war between suicidal developer Silicon Knights and
Nice.
now behemoth Epic Games.
Epic Games. Why do I know that name? Have they done anything?
They made a Fortnite?
Oh, shit! That's right!
We got that out of the way early. And this is in reference to their once friendly deal together regarding Unreal 3, arguably one of the most important and popular video game engines of its entire generation, in which the ongoing legal battle about the use of this not only led to the complete closure of a once legitimate and, in my opinion, talented studio, but also the massive recall and permanent removal of once actual on-the-shelf materials.
Nice.
Yeah. This is Hot Button, and this is the tale of Silicon Knights v. Epic Games.
Yep.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I'm Randall Beatrice, and I am here with Austin Blakesley,
Yeah.
Chris Antuano. I was pointing to you guys so you could introduce yourselves, and nobody
worked out really good.
nobody took me up on it.
I don't like saying my own name. It's bad luck.
That's not like Baltimore. So who's ready for a war here?
Me. This is not the engine war. This has nothing to do with Henry Ford.
It could.
Just go on.
We're going to do things actually a little differently today. As this story is kind of a biggie, we're going to split
Nobody
hosting
says that.
duties. A biggie?
Just
A
go on.
biggie? We're going to split hosting duties today. We're going to kind of switch back and forth between our two companies here and their sides in this fight. Because there was a bunch of different titles affected by this case, really. But at the very center of it was a little game called Too Human. And but before we can run the autopsy on what went wrong there with that game, we're going to do a little history lesson first with our two boxing contestants. So Austin, why don't you take the winner and I will take the loser. Normally I would say losers first, but it actually looks like on our timeline here that your company was founded first by 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So despite it being under a different name, I think. So why don't you tell the story of Epic Games?
Okay. So, Epic Games was founded by Tim Sweeney in 1991. Tim Sweeney is not a name that a lot of people know.
No,
But it's a
never
They
name.
heard.
should.
It's a name a lot more people should know.
Yeah.
Because in addition to being the CEO of Epic Games and rich as fuck,
Yeah.
he is also mostly responsible for Unreal Engine as a whole.
Do you think he uses the basic Fortnite skin when he plays? Probably.
No, he's probably got all of them. So, yeah, Epic Games was founded in 1991 as Potomac Computer Systems. There's gonna
Not
be
as much of a ring to it.
There's
No,
going to be a
it
lot of
doesn't.
marketing v programmer speak here. This guy is not a great marketer, but he's a fantastic programmer.
Wait, what is it again?
Potomac Computer Systems.
Yeah, there's no costumes in Spirit Halloween brought to you by Potomac Computer Systems.
The kids are all into.
This is where that very creative name came from. He was still a student at University of Maryland, which was in Potomac, Maryland. Hence the name Potomac Computer Systems.
I'm following you so far.
Yeah. He released a game referred to as ZZT. It was a zoo simulator.
And naming really wasn't his thing.
Yeah. He named it that so that it would be last alphabetically on some list. That's why he named it that.
That's
guy's definitely a
strategy.
programmer.
Yeah, somebody asked him what ZZT stood for, and he said nothing. I wanted to be last on the list, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
but
backwards race.
It took him 9 months to develop, but again, here's how much of a nerd he was. It only took him that long because he wrote his own language before writing the actual game, called ZZT Op.
Okay.
And he didn't have any distribution or anything, and the internet wasn't that big back in those days, so he took orders by mail for the game.
Wow.
People sent him in the money for the game, and
Box
then
tops.
he would write a disc out of it and mail it back to them.
Holy shit.
And
That's great.
He sent the last copy in like 2013.
What?
Somebody found an old mail-in thing for it and sent it to him at his office at Epic Games, and he
This
he
is legally binding.
he made a copy and sent it back to them. So,
Fantastic.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
and this was in the big days.
Yeah, take a
of-
note, Bezos. How about when somebody writes you give a little bit of that wealth up? All right, sorry.
Have you written to...
No.
But the game did relatively well for being written by one guy and needing to mail in money to get
It
it.
sounds like it, yeah.
So in 1992, he decided that he wanted his company to be taken a little more seriously, to compete with companies like Apogee and id. He wanted his company to sound important. So what two words sound important? Epic
Big
and mega.
cock. No.
Epic and Mega. So he renamed
Epic
the game
Mega.
from Potomac Computer Systems to Epic Mega Games.
So close, buddy. So close.
He wanted the name of the company to sound
Nailed it.
like it was more large and important than it actually was. So he picked the two words that meant large and important and shoved them together.
God.
But he had graduated college at this point and was getting more serious about making games. So he started hiring employees. I will name two names because there were a lot of them, and I don't know all their names. But the two important ones were Mark Rain, who was actually an ex-businessman who used to work at id Software.
Okay.
And in an interview, Tim Sweeney did say he credited Mark Rain with Epic being where it is today. He said if he hadn't hired him, he wouldn't know if we knew the name Epic today. So
They wouldn't be billions of dollars richer.
I mean, if you're making a bunch of shooters for people that like Quake, you hire the guy that
Makes
marketed
sense. That
marketed
marketed
Quake.
Quake, yeah.
It's not a bad idea. And then he hired a bunch more just out of college programmers, including one Cliff Blazinski, who was 17 at the time.
Cliffy B.
Yep.
Austin's
He's not going to come up
personal
again. That dude sucks.
Was that on purpose?
He's not going to come up again. That dude sucks. I would just like to point out that he was 17 when he got hired, and he is not as important as people
I
think
guess
he is.
I'll delete the Lawbreakers part off of my timeline.
But yeah, so that was 1992. A lot of shit happened in between that and what I'm about to say next. We're going to flash forward 6 years. Games like Jazz Jackrabbit and a couple other games came out.
There's a sequel to that, I think.
Yeah, there was.
right.
There was a sequel in there somewhere. But Epic decided to team up with a company named Digital Extremes, who you may
Trend
know.
with these people's names.
Get your Pornhub joke out now.
Oh yeah, what do they do?
You may know the name Digital Extremes. They have made a few games on their own. One of them being Warframe.
Okay,
which is-
Warframe, nice.
but they teamed up with Epic to make a shooter called Unreal.
Never heard of it.
But Tim Sweeney was actually, despite the competition that would bloom out of this decision, Tim Sweeney was a huge fan of John Carmack from id.
Okay.
And being a programmer, he was a huge fan of John Carmack's programming specifically. Because John Carmack at the time pioneered a lot of stuff that first-person shooter still used to this day. He obviously made all the technology that went into Doom and Quake.
Yes.
So Tim Sweeney said, I'm going to make an engine where I can make something like Quake.
Okay.
That game that would become competition for Quake was called Unreal. And so
What team are you on?
in another in a string of very creative naming schemes, he decided to name his new engine the Unreal Engine.
Yo, this shit is unreal. We're making shit extreme over here at Epic Mega Games.
Wait, was it Mega Epic or Epic Mega?
Who
It was
cares?
epic space, and then as one word, Mega Games.
Oh man, it's even.
Yeah, it's
Even
worse
worse
than
than
it's
I
worse than you
thought,
think it
yeah.
is. But at the time when they were working on Unreal, they started to show off their technology because he was very proud of it and he wanted people to know what he was working on.
That seems fair.
Yeah,
And-
check this out. What if it was a shooter, but you moved 10,000 miles an hour and it looked like you were viewing it through a fisheye lens? You guys in? You guys in?
And the idea of companies using other companies' engines at the time, that wasn't a thing.
No, everybody made their own shit.
But there were a lot of companies who were tired of making their own game engines.
Makes sense.
And so, without being prompted, Epic wasn't in the business of making this engine so other people could use it.
No.
They were making it so that they could make Unreal. But companies started contacting them out of the blue and saying, we like what you showed. Can we use your engine to make our game?
Okay. Where did they show it at? Just some
Nerd
tech
convention.
conference?
I don't know. That didn't come up in my research. But
That's fair.
yeah, there was two companies, Microprose, who I believe is still around. They made a Star Trek game.
Which one? There's a lot of those.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. I don't have the exact name here, but it was some long, like Star Trek Discovery Legends 2.3, The Return of Klingon or whatever. I don't know. And then
Age of Ultron.
another game based on the fantasy book series Wheel of Time, developed by Legend Entertainment. And both of these games actually came out before Unreal came out.
Okay.
So Unreal was not the first Unreal Engine game to be released. This will be important later.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you find out that sometimes you make an engine while you're making games, it's not the worst thing in the world. But some people, who Randy will later talk about, don't really believe that. But yeah, this was also the start of a war between id Software and Epic Games, which I won't get too far into because I feel like there's enough information there for its own episode. We might talk about that later.
Yeah,
But
I like wars. I'm American.
But it was basically, at the time, a lot of companies started contacting other companies who did good work and saying, we want to use your engine. And a lot of people went to Epic, but a lot of people also went to id. And there are a lot of games to this day still using both companies' engines. The Call of Duty engine that they're currently
Quake
using
2 engine,
is
right?
built on the Quake 2 engine. Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm on Team Mid, by the way, between the two of those. So
I don't know. Have you played Fortnite?
Runs like a fucking charm.
Yeah, you know what else is on Unreal?
the Switch.
PUBG.
Runs like a... Oh, wait.
runs like a fat three-legged.
So yeah, the Star Trek game came out. The Wheel of Time game came out. And then in 1998, Unreal came out. And Unreal was a lot more of a hit than Epic thought it would be. And actually, he made a game inspired by Quake and then accidentally made Quake's biggest competitor.
Yeah.
So a year later, in 1999, the use of Unreal Engine was in full force. Epic Mega Games decided to move to an actual studio instead of being just a bunch of employees. They moved to a studio in North Carolina, where they still are.
Into Epic, North Carolina. That's when they decided to change the
and
name.
they dropped the Mega from their name.
About
So as of
time.
1999, they were simply known as Epic Games. At this time, there were 16 external projects using the Unreal Engine,
Nice.
That's a lot.
including two you may have heard of: the original Deus Ex
Nice.
and a little game called Duke Nukem Forever.
Well, I mean, Duke Nukem Forever was in development for so long. That was also on the Quake 2 engine before that, right? Or something?
Yes.
That game was in development since 96,
It was on the Quake engine.
97?
I believe it
Yeah.
might have been on all 3 versions of Unreal by the time it came out.
Wait, when it did come out, what was it, Unreal 3?
I don't know. That's a good
It
question.
was a hit, right?
Yeah, it was
When
totally
came
worth the
out?
wait.
Yeah,
It was not
That's what I
like one of the
Great
worst
game,
games
great
I've
game.
ever played.
But yeah, the one thing that Quake had going for it that Unreal
fucking
didn't
game.
have going for it was the multiplayer. A lot of people like using or like playing Quake's multiplayer. So Epic's next project was announced as a multiplayer version of the game Unreal, known as Unreal Tournament.
Yes.
Using
That's
this
the first
engine.
time I played Unreal Tournament in 2003. I remember having it was 4 discs.
I remember that being a good one. That was 4 discs on
Yeah.
PC.
We'll get there.
Oh, okay.
So this is the original Unreal Tournament.
2003 was on PS3, right? That was the one that was...
I'm not
Nope.
sure.
No? Fuck.
That was Unreal Tournament 3. Or Unreal Championship 3. The names get very confusing.
God.
Okay, so as soon as the engine for Unreal was developed, Tim Sweeney, I guess not in the habit of making actual games, he just started working on the next engine. So there were a lot of updates to Unreal. Now they had to worry about people not just internally, but externally coming to them with development issues. So,
All right. It would make sense. You would dedicate more of time and workforce to that if there's a way to make money off of it.
Right, yeah.
So Tim Sweeney got to work right after Unreal Engine 1 came out, and in 2002, it was replaced with Unreal Engine 2. And again, Unreal Engine 2's first game was not an Unreal game. Unreal Engine 2's first game was America's Army.
Oh my God. The recruitment tool.
The recruitment
I played
tool
that.
military shooter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played that game.
So
I
Unreal Engine...
remember there were literally parts of the game where you were like sitting in a classroom, like taking a test. Like it was a first-person shooter, and you were like in first person sitting in a classroom, like doing paperwork. It was realistic.
It's realistic.
But again...
Which part of the game, when you come back, does your country not take care of you? Was that in one of the DLCs?
No, that's DLC.
or-
Damn it!
Okay.
yeah, that's the end game in that.
Yeah.
It's really good. Comes with Prozac.
But this engine was developed for use with an Epic game, and that Epic game was Unreal Tournament 2003,
Okay.
Here's it is.
as well as Unreal Championship. Now, this is where the naming gets very confusing. Epic started noticing that console games were entering the 3D space and being taken seriously, so they decided to start making their engines work on both consoles and on PCs.
So this wasn't until Unreal 2 that ran on consoles? Unreal 1? There were
Again, there's so many names. Okay, so they released Unreal Tournament 2003.
Yeah.
And then they released for the Xbox Unreal Championship, which was a
Okay.
different series from Unreal Tournament.
Call of Duty did
Okay.
that for a little while.
Then they once again upgraded to Unreal Engine 2 to what they called Unreal Engine 2.5, which I'd have to get into a bunch of technical details as to what they updated. But basically, they released 2 more games in those 2 series that were now running on the new 2.5 engine. And that was Unreal Tournament 2004 and Unreal Championship 2, the Leandry Conflict. You remember that game? That was the third-person one.
Oh, yeah, I do
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Man.
As well as a sequel to the original Unreal called Unreal 2 The Awakening.
Oh, God.
So now we're dealing with 3 separate Unreal series. We have Unreal, Unreal Tournament, and Unreal Championship. But this is when the Unreal Engine started to really pick up steam.
It was getting real.
Yeah. And there were a lot of... This is when they started selling the engine to people.
Yeah.
Because, like I said,
Right.
with Unreal 1, people were like, yo, can we get some of that
So this-
on the phone? But, like...
This was before it was like a portion of your profits. This was just a license, like a flat out license
Yeah.
you would buy? Okay.
Yeah. So, and a lot of popular games ran on Unreal 2. The interesting thing about Unreal 2 is that...
Used way longer than you'd think it would.
Yeah, people didn't know about Unreal 2 at the time, though, because I don't know if you guys remember playing games like Mass Effect and stuff like that, but like, or like 2 Human. Well, 2 Human wasn't on Unreal. We'll get to that later. But
It kind of was.
Unreal 3 games had that U logo in the front,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
splash screen. that was a requirement for being a licensee of Unreal
Right,
3.
it was,
It
yeah.
wasn't for 2.
Couldn't you pay to not see it or something?
Yes, you could.
Yeah, that was strange.
But you had to. It had to be somewhere in the game.
Yeah.
But Unreal 2, that wasn't the thing. So a lot of people don't know that Unreal 2 was used a lot.
Or if you're like me, you go into the files and then you delete all those videos so your PC games boot up faster. Yeah? You don't have to watch the NVIDIA thing spin around 1,000 times.
Yeah, I never understood the Unreal thing. Like, any consumer really knows or cares about the engine that the game is running on. I don't know.
It's the same with things like the Havoc's physics engine. And
See,
stuff.
you would think that, but like at the same time, like I said, Unreal 2 was not as big as Unreal 3, but a lot more consumers knew about Unreal 3.
Yeah.
There was a trust there.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you play Gears of War and it looks and runs great, and it has that Unreal logo in the beginning, and then you play Mass Effect and it has that Unreal logo in the beginning, you're like, oh shit, they're using Unreal. This game's gonna look good.
Yeah.
So that was like part of the marketing of like requiring companies to put your logo at the beginning of the game.
That's only something I sort of became conscious of, like, as an adult. Like, seeing
who's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when it pops up DICE, you know there's going to be lots of explosions on your PGA golf
Yeah,
course.
And you know the online's not going to work.
Damn it! Joke. But Unreal Engine 2 was used for a lot of games for a long time. The first Splinter Cell game came out in 2002, the year Unreal 2 was released, and that used Unreal 2.
Awesome game.
And
Yeah, it was a good game.
every entry in the Splinter Cell series,
Until
except for the last one.
Wait, Blacklist wasn't the last. Was it? Blacklist was the last one.
Oh yeah, Blacklist was the last one.
Did they use it?
God, that game. Yeah,
I don't remember.
Okay,
Conviction was really good though.
I was thinking of Conviction. Yeah, Blacklist was 2013. Splinter Cell Blacklist came out in 2013, and it still used Unreal 2.
That's
Holy
fucking
shit.
crazy.
Games like Rainbow Six 3 used Unreal 2. 13 used Unreal 2.
Man, I remember that game. That's cool.
Our old friend Advent Rising was built on Unreal 2. And even into the next generation, when Unreal 3 was out, games like BioShock used Unreal 2. Which Randy said, BioShock came out the same year as Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Mass Effect used Unreal 3. BioShock was still using Unreal 2.
That's funny.
So a lot of companies...
BioShock, better looking game than Mass Effect.
Yeah, arguably, yeah, for sure. Stylized better, so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, Mass Effect was like a bigger thing, but yeah.
Yeah, this was kind of the birth of like engine licensing. A lot of studios stopped making their own engines and started licensing out other engines so that they could get their
Lazy
ideas out there
motherfuckers,
better
am I right?
and let them run faster. Some companies are just better off letting other people handle the technical stuff and letting their artists and their writers flourish.
Yeah.
Some companies, however, are much worse off when they license engines. Specifically, one such company, and I'm going to pass it back to Randy to talk about
This
said
company
company.
is literally like somebody shooting themselves in the head, and like, all right. So, Silicon Knights. Have you? I'm not sure if you ever played any games that they've made, but I don't know if you recognize that logo, the sword through the two cubes, I think, or something like that.
It was really cool.
It was
Yeah,
really
I
cool.
The
think I do
logo?
remember
Cool
the
logo.
Yeah.
They did something right.
Because knights have swords.
Well, actually, they did a couple stuff right. All right, so they were a Canadian developer located in Ontario, and so
barely Canadian. Go on.
I mentioned they were founded a year after Epic. This was 1992
Yeah.
by programmer and gamergator Dennis Dyack.
It should be mentioned they were founded the same year as Epic, but 1 year later than Potomac Computer Systems.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But they got their start making strategy action games on PC for a while before shifting to consoles with the release of a PlayStation 1 game called Blood Omen Legacy of Kain in 1996. Decent game.
Kane. Yeah.
They wouldn't hit their big break until their survival horror GameCube title Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem in 2002. After signing an exclusivity deal with Nintendo in 2000 during the game's development on the N64. Which was very rare at the time for kind of such a major Japanese publisher like Nintendo to team up with a North American studio this way.
Yeah.
They're like Nintendo pretty protective of like their
Oh, yeah.
IPs. But they saw
the
something.
last time they fucked with the Americans.
they saw something in the studio and were pretty big on like this game was published by them, and this was I think only after the stuff with Rare and N64 like Perfect Dark and Conker's Bad Fur Day. This was like the first real M-rated game published by Nintendo. But
Yes.
this game was fucking awesome. And it's I don't know if you've ever played it. It was kind of done in the style of like a Resident Evil or Silent Hill style game, but it had this really cool sort of Lovecraftian and Poe inspired lore, and it was
that's what I've heard.
It's really neat. It was basically like you played as various characters throughout history that found this tome that was made out of that was bound in like human flesh and blood, and it was cool. It was essentially like you got to sort of like kind of bounce around through time to like tell the story, but it was a really epic game. It's one of my favorite like pieces.
Did you say it was an epic game?
It's one of my favorite pieces of horror fiction.
Yeah.
It's a shame the people behind it kind of ended up being who they were, but it was a really cool thing. It was crazy. And it wasn't huge, like, despite the fact that how much I enjoyed it, it was not hugely commercially successful. But it still gained the attention of well-known video game director and artist Hideo Kojima, whose team and publisher Konami granted them the permission to collaborate with Nintendo to create Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, a whole top-to-bottom remake of the PlayStation 1 classic for the GameCube. And that was, like, in my opinion, like, that and the Resident Evil remake on GameCube are some of the best, like, kind of, like, modern iterations of classic games.
Yeah.
Like, well, modern at the time. Obviously, they're pretty outdated now. But I loved that Twin Snakes remake. I know there are some hardcore fans that weren't crazy about some of the changes, but to me, it was just a better looking and better playing Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
And being a fan of that series, it was neat. And it's funny because both of those never left that console ever. Like in the modern age where like the archival and re-release of games is so kind of, it's such a big market now. Like, it's strange that those only exist just in that time. But
it's a little gem for you.
a little bit for me, anyway. You know, those were two very specific releases for me. The Twin Snakes was actually one of the few 2-disc GameCube games that was out there. Yes. But this was really that game was released in 2004. The exclusivity deal with Nintendo ended at this time, so they only did 2 projects with them. Eternal Darkness was in development a long, long time. As I mentioned, that started on the N64, but like initially, I think it was supposed to be a launch game for the GameCube. It got pushed back. But at that point, they formed a partnership with Microsoft Game Studios. This was a year later, in 2005, to produce Too Human, a game previously stuck in development hell for nearly a decade. Jeez. And so I brought that game up earlier. This is the thing that pretty much makes this whole story, is the development around this game. Nintendo apparently even had stock still within the company during this time, so it's kind of strange. They went from being a kind of a little known sort of studio. Like, I don't know how big their staff was, but like they were first party with Nintendo and then went right to being first party with Microsoft. So it seemed like at this point they were going to be big. Like that company was going to be a big deal.
All the telltale signs.
And so Too Human. This game was first announced in 1999 for the original PlayStation. They even debuted a teaser trailer at E3 that year for it. It was set to be released on 4 discs, kind of similar to Square Enix's Final Fantasy VIII, I think, on the PlayStation 1. There were some early videos I mentioned earlier that I had to like really hunt down. I think IGN was the one that hosted them at the time, but they presented the game as like a third-person action RPG, which was similar to what the final product sort of ended up being, except that without its strange like dual stick controls and like zoomed out camera. We'll talk more about Too Human and like what that game actually was, but the initial pitch was, it seemed like it was more of a Deus Ex kind of style, like sort of stealth game with some shooting. Yeah. When the end result ended up being something more in line with like Diablo. Like there was a lot of emphasis on like stats and drops and fighting like large amounts of enemies at a time, sort of gauntlet style. And it had drop in and out multiplayer, you know, when it came out. But yeah, the initial thing looked way different. It was also like at the time that news first came out about it, the story, while in the end it still retained those themes of human cybernetic enhancements or whatever it was, my gestures there. The actual
classic human cybernetic gestures,
right? The actual setting was meant to be set in the distant future of 2450 AD, rather than the alternative sci-fi take on Norse mythology that it ended up being.
Weird.
That change didn't come until later in development. So yeah, I don't know if you remember that game.
I don't even know about
Too
it.
Human?
No, I've like heard you talk about it.
I beat it.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You're out of your mind. That game's
I beat
not
it.
good.
Listen, I beat a lot of firsts in planned trilogies that later got canceled.
You don't know how much it breaks.
This is number 2 on the
You know
podcast.
how much it breaks my heart that neither of you guys have played Eternal Darkness and you finished Too Human.
Maybe they should make Eternal Darkness for a better console. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, I'll fight someone about the game.
I'm saying, dude, when I'm playing Fortnite, dude, I don't have time to play your eternal dank shit. It's fucking garbage to me.
So this was this kind of
I don't
halt.
play Fortnite. Don't come after me.
I think he does. He's on a cell phone playing it right now.
Yeah, I don't either.
He's playing it on a cell phone in one hand and a tablet in the other. They're just both laid out in front of him. So this halt in development that I mentioned, this happened when Nintendo announced their exclusive partnership with them, which is what moved the game off of the PlayStation and onto the GameCube initially. And prototyping for the game still took place on the GameCube, but most of the staff at this time in the early 2000s they were devoting the majority of their efforts to Eternal Darkness and MGS, the Twin Snakes. So news of that title went dead without any indication of further development for years, until suddenly it was officially announced again in May 2005 as an Xbox 360 exclusive as per that deal with Microsoft.
Yeah.
It was also revealed at this time that the game was going to be the first in a planned trilogy, and similar to, I guess, to Mass Effect, and more importantly, that the studio would be using Epic's Unreal Engine 3 for all of their current generation projects going forward. And this was shown, it was later shown at E3 of 2006, alongside Epic Games' powerhouse title and Unreal 3 brother, Gears of War, both of which had release dates in the same season. So Unreal 3, really big deal. And yeah, Austin's kind of going to dive into that a little bit of why that partnership, while that shaking hands over that actually ended up being their demise.
So, flashback to 2004. I said Unreal Tournament 2004 was released on Unreal 2.5, quote unquote. Unreal 3 was pretty heavy in development. Yeah. And it had been since 2003, the year after Unreal 2 had come out. Yeah. Again, Tim Sweeney, not a huge fan of making games, just really likes making engines. So the second he stops making one, he just starts making the other.
He likes naming stuff, too.
Yeah.
If you do some research, you'll also find out that Unreal Engine 4, which came out in 2014, started development in 2006 or 2005. There's not actually a specific date I could find, but that engine started development right after Gears of War came out, apparently, and was in development for 8 years before it came out.
Jeez.
So he just cranks these engines out. But they held a demo, again at some nerd conference, couldn't find the name.
Nerdcore.
Yeah.
NerdCon.
They held a demo for Unreal 3.
2000.
They showed off one of those pre-rendered things, I don't know how into E3 and everything.
It was one where they showed a bunch of balls dropping, and there's a dragon.
They're just like, here's a random generic dude with a sword and a chick with big boobs, and look how big her boobs are. That's the power of Unreal 3. You know those demos. Now
I'm following you.
Yeah. The video game industry is a hell of a sexist thing. But so first screenshots for
Dennis Dyack has some thoughts on that.
Oh god. First screenshots for Unreal 3's demo had surfaced online, and it was revealed as the next generation engine from Epic. Got a lot of people excited. When I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of developers. Yeah. I don't think there were many people out there that were like, fuck yeah, dude, Unreal 3's coming. What?
Yeah.
But these developers had a reason to get excited because Epic had finally announced that they were going to start focusing more on consoles. I said Unreal 2 had been developed to work with consoles. And I said games like Splinter Cell, which came out for Xbox and PS2, were some of the first games to come out for the.
Splinter Cell also came out on GameCube. That's where I played it.
Oh, sorry.
You better be.
You're right. You're right.
God That's how he beats to death with the GameCube.
Yeah, it's got a handle. It does. But that engine, Unreal 2 started out as a PC engine, and when the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube started getting big, after Unreal 2 was way in development, they had went back and made it work for these consoles. But this time they were going to develop the engine while the consoles were going to be developed.
Right.
So that they could get the most power out of these consoles that they possibly could. In retrospect, maybe not a great idea.
I was about to ask that. I was like, that seemed like...
Because developing consoles change a lot. As we've learned, if you listen to our Xbox episode, you will learn that sometimes the final hardware...
Everything works out exactly the way you want it.
Sometimes the final hardware for a console isn't decided on until like 6 months before the thing comes out. So developing it in tandem with these consoles was a good idea, as we'll learn, because Unreal 3 was huge, like Randy said. But in the beginning, there were some growing pains. Unreal 4, I don't think, had a huge game from Epic. But up until this point, Epic made their engines for their games, and then let other people use them. So this time around, they had cut some deals. They cut a deal with PlayStation and Microsoft. Each one of them would get an exclusive game for their console developed on Epic's new Unreal Engine.
Who made out
3.
better here?
Microsoft, as we learned. The PS3 exclusive was Unreal Tournament 3.
I thought it was Championship.
Who cares?
It's one of the two.
I can describe the box. It's white and red.
It's white and red, yeah.
I think
It's got a Roman numeral 3 on it.
I think it's 3. It's Champions 3? No.
I think it's Tournament 3.
Tournament 3.
It's called Unreal Tournament 3, even though there was no Unreal Tournament 2. There was an Unreal Championship 2.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, I know. Dude, just
I'm Googling this right now.
It's just a disaster.
No, keep going. It is a goddamn disaster.
Yeah, but that game was cross-platform with PC, obviously, because if you announce a sequel to a PC exclusive series and then announce it's only going to be on the PlayStation 3, people would get angry. So it wasn't that big of an exclusive because it was mostly, I think it had cross-play.
Whoa, there was an Unreal Tournament was on PlayStation 2?
Yes.
The fuck? All right, so I mentioned the box art, by the way. I just have to bring this up because this is brilliant. It was Unreal Tournament 3, and it has the Unreal symbol on the front of the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the logo of the game, I thought. It's the same as the engine's
It's the Unreal,
logo.
It's the engine's logo.
Yeah, it's the U.
Yeah, but how many other game series has the engine logo front and center on their box? Yeah, it's...
But yeah, no one was hugely excited about that because you were just... Basically, you were...
Oh, this was on 360 as well.
You were giving people an inferior version of the PC version. And yeah, it did later come to 360. It wasn't that big of an exclusive. The big exclusive, as Randy mentioned, was Gears of War. And this was...
little game.
Yeah. This was the thing that got people excited. The engine demo was the thing that got developers excited.
That was the system seller.
This was the thing that got people excited. We could go on for days about demos and trailers for Gears of War. Everybody remembers the Mad World trailer for Gears of War.
Donnie Darko fucking cover.
But basically, Gears of War was a good game, sure, but it was meant as a technical showcase. They were trying to show people the power of their new engine on these consoles. There are even rumors that a running demo of Gears of War was shown to Microsoft. Microsoft was still in development on the Xbox 360, and they were trying to decide on the specs of the thing. They were just trying to decide between giving it 256 megabytes or 512 megabytes of RAM. And Epic Games showed them a demo of Gears of War running on a 256 gigabyte
compared to
megabyte
512
dev kit and one running on a 512 dev kit, and that is the thing that made Microsoft decide to make that console 512 megabytes.
Wow.
So,
makes sense. I mean, that game kind of is fucking incredible in that time period.
Yeah.
This was also a huge game for Microsoft because people were excited about it. Epic had a history, and Microsoft's own game series weren't going to be...
That was their big holiday release.
Yes, they weren't going to be ready in time for the console's launch. Halo 3, as we found out, came out in 2007, a whole year after Gears of War. But for the holiday of 2006, Microsoft needed a big game to keep selling their console to kids at Christmas, and Gears of War was that game. But just like consoles, the engine which was being developed in conjunction with the consoles, was very much in flux. By the time Gears of War came out, I don't even think the PlayStation 3 was launched, or it had just launched. So, like,
Yeah, I guess that
the
lines
engine
up.
was very much in flux the whole time, too. They weren't sure. They wanted to optimize this engine to work on these consoles, but since the consoles weren't decided on, the engine was also not fully realized and decided on. And also, Epic was now much more focused on making this engine easier to use for other people. They were working on Gears of War, but they wanted their engine to be as easy as possible to use.
Yeah, so they can make a ton more of these sweet fucking deals.
Yeah.
makes sense.
And using licensed game engines, as I said, can be a lot easier for studios, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. It's not like a plug and play thing where you just like they give you Unreal, the Unreal Engine, and then you just draw a bunch of shapes and throw them in there, and it spits out a game. Like your team still has to have the technical know-how of how to use the engine. It still requires a lot of coding and stuff like that.
Or every game would be Gears of War.
So in the Unreal
For
2,
a while, they kind of weren't. No, just kidding.
in the Unreal 2 days, Epic had started the practice of hiring employees just to support developers. They had a whole division. They had a whole team working on games like Gears of War and Unreal Tournament 3, but they also had a whole team whose entire job was to just go out to studios who were making Unreal games and help them.
Yeah.
Was to field calls from people and being like, why is your engine broken? And they had to be like, it's not broken, you're doing it wrong, and then show them how to do it. They even got...
I bet that division would grow bigger and bigger and bigger over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
When Unreal 3 came out, that division was huge.
Yeah.
So much so that Epic didn't exactly have the space or money to really hire a team the size they would need to field all of the requests from other Unreal 3 developers. So they started making contracts with other studios to basically just be houses that were built to just help other people make Unreal games.
Right.
Two of these studios you may have heard of. Digital Extremes, I mentioned before, helped develop the Unreal Tournament games. They later went on to make games like Dark Sector and then eventually Warframe. Another one of these studios was Psyonix.
Mediocre.
Who people may recognize. Once again, they made mods. They started out making mods for Unreal Tournament. Were later hired by Epic. They helped develop Gears
the
of
Valve
War.
strategy.
They helped develop games like Mass Effect. And they later went on to make their own game called Rocket League.
Hey!
Little game
So-
based all about the physics. It's all about the physics, boy.
I mean, these studios got so good at using Unreal
Yeah, really.
that they could just get anything they wanted out of these
Yeah.
engines. And I'm sure there are more out there that probably aren't as popular that I don't need to name, but those two specifically were huge. And this practice really helped Unreal's reputation as a good engine to use. Because like I said, the engine licensing business was gaining a lot of steam, but it was like relatively new in the 2000s. And so like Epic also kind of pioneered the whole thing of like, we're going to have people who basically live at your studio and help you use our engine.
Right.
Smart idea, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But despite a lot of this, there were studios out there that still had some trouble using Unreal.
Well, certainly it's not my boys at Silicon Knights. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they put a sword in their logo.
Yeah, they put a sword in their logo.
There were plenty of studios out there who got games shipped out. And you can go on the internet and you can find stories of people being like, Unreal's a nightmare to use. I hate it. But it's just people bitching about their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, games like Mass Effect. And I keep using Mass Effect as an example, but it's a great example. There are other games that used Unreal 3, like Mirror's Edge and Dishonored.
Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat. Like, they came out, they're great games. And I'm sure no game that came out during that period was a hell of a lot of fun to develop. Video games tend to be hard things to make.
Yeah.
But like, there are a lot of interviews of people, kind of bitching and being like, Unreal was kind of a nightmare to use. Epic didn't have great documentation or whatever. But
Right,
what?
Shut up and build your own engine then.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have the time or money or manpower?
It's
Then
funny you should
shut
bring that up because one studio in particular got so fed up with Epic and their bullshit that they decided that they were going to make their own engine and they were going to show Epic how it's done. And that studio goes by the name Silicon Knights.
Woo!
So I'm going to pass it back to Randy to talk more about Too Human.
All right, Too Human, everybody's favorite Xbox 360 exclusive. You throw out your Gears of War, you throw out your Halos.
Never heard of them.
You throw out your, what else was exclusive on the 360? I was trying to think of something stupid.
Fable.
Yeah. Well, Fable 2 and 3. Fable 1 was an original Xbox
Too
game.
Human listed a lot different sources as one of the biggest flops in the Xbox 360's history.
Yes. and this is which is great because that game had a
Is that all Too
budget.
Human for you,
Oh,
Randall?
that game
Big
had
flop.
a budget between $60 to $80 million, quite a bit at the time. Now, I mentioned that this game and Gears of War were both supposed to come out in holiday of 06. Guess which one missed its release date?
Halo.
Well, I guess that's true.
That wasn't an option.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
wasn't an option. Too Human misses its 2006 holiday release date. But Gears of War, on the other hand, came out. And they did hit their date.
And kind of set the world on fire.
And kind of set the world on fire.
Yeah.
Critical and commercial acclaim. And I don't know, I got into a weird accent there with acclaim. Acclaim.
That's a video game developer also.
Yeah. And it is no longer around. They made Burnout.
Yep.
Great guys.
Eh.
Well, you know. But so
Yeah, I heard they were all rapists.
Didn't they also make BMX XXX?
yeah, they did. That's part of what killed them actually. But so the development on this game took 2 more years to complete, finally hitting shelves on August 19th, 2008. And this is a whole year after the lawsuits against Epic were filed, what I mentioned earlier. Despite a heavy marketing push featuring documentary films and at the time the most downloaded action demo in the history of Xbox Live, they had over 900,000 downloads. For the demo of this, the game failed to connect with critics and audiences upon release.
Yeah.
When did it come out? Do we know? what time?
2008.
2008.
September 2008?
August. I just said it.
August.
Oh, August. Sorry, I was just trying
sons
to
of
say
bitches.
there was a black president before this game came out. That's how long it was in development.
No, it wasn't.
It was that year. That's what I was saying.
He was sworn in 2009, sir.
It's true. It takes a while. So this game only scored around a 65 on Metacritic.
I beat it. Never said I liked beating it.
I assume that was.
This should be specified right now. Not a great game.
How long was that game?
It's too long. I
It was
don't
too
remember.
long. The demo was
Should
too
have been
long.
a title too long. Am I right?
So as I mentioned, this game scored about a 65 on Metacritic. It sold around 168,200 copies within the first month.
Yeah, one of them's your boy right over here.
In a later interview with Dennis Dyack, he stated that the game pulled in at about 700,000 units in its lifetime worldwide sales overall.
Yo, less game copies sold than copies of the demo downloaded.
Oh my god, that is totally true.
That's how bad that demo was.
Boy. Yeah, maybe that demo was not a good idea.
It wasn't, but I still bought the game because I'm a dumbass.
So many fans and game outlets were pretty disappointed considering the long development time of the game and the pedigree of the studio, myself included. Those higher up at Silicon Knights very quickly blamed the quality of the final product on Epic and its Unreal Engine 3, even filing a lawsuit against them that I mentioned earlier during the game's development. So the game wasn't even out by the time that it hit the press that this attack basically was going on. Well, Austin mentioned other game companies were still using this engine and releasing their projects at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was already pretty much flawed from the start because if they were basically being like, "Yo, your engine's fucked." There's a bunch of examples already out there why it's not. But the lawsuit specifically, to get into the details of that, like I said, it was filed a year before the game came out, which the game came out in August of 2008. The lawsuit, it was revealed in that I guess this was on July 19th, 2007. This is 13 months before. Then they sued Epic Games due to, quote, breach of contract, including inadequacies of Epic's support service and cooperation with Silicon Knights concerning the engine, concerning Unreal 3. Silicon Knights also accused Epic of missing the deadline to provide a fully functional version of their engine in time to finish development on the game. Despite the fact that Gears of War came out in 2006.
Without the unfinished version.
Yeah.
And I highly doubt that was in the contract anyway. There's no way Epic Games would say, we'll have it done by the time your game's finished. Like, I don't feel like that wasn't involved.
They went as far as to say on top of that, in the suit, that Epic Games was quote-unquote sabotaging Unreal 3 licensees. So, which, not true.
I don't know if I said this, but they had switched at this point. Before the lawsuit was filed, they scrapped Unreal. They came out and they said, we lost millions and millions of dollars using this piece of shit engine. So they developed their own engine. In the world of creative names, it was called the Silicon Knights engine.
Woo!
Jesus.
I keep wooing, but
it's a sword going through an engine.
To be fair,
logo.
What's the Metal Gear Phantom Pain engine is called like the Fox engine, is and the newest Resident Evil.
Well, that's creative integrity. Back off,
a little
Kojima.
bit more creative than Capcom's. The engine that Resident Evil 7 uses is just called the RE engine.
Yeah,
both of those engines are incredible, but.
They've gotten better at it. The Assassin's Creed engine is called the Anvil engine.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty
The Division engine's called the Snowdrop engine.
That's
that
all right. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, wait,
no,
what? The Snowdrop?
Yeah, that's okay.
Then they have...
Doesn't Siege runs on the Assassin's Creed one, right?
Anvil, yeah. And then there's the Frostbite. Everybody knows
Frostbite. Yeah, that's
Frostbite.
EA's.
Yeah. Classic.
That sounds cooler.
They've gotten better at it.
But... Epic's licensing document stated that a working version of the game engine would be available within 6 months of the Xbox 360 developer kits being released. So Silicon Knights claimed that not only did Epic miss this deadline, but when a working version of the engine was eventually released, the documentation was insufficient, as Austin said earlier. Some claims that devs had working on this thing. Yeah. So they continued to say that Epic had withheld vital improvements to the game engine, stating that they were game specific, quote unquote. I got to keep doing that. Just because to make sure that these aren't my words coming out, while also using licensing fees to fund development of its own titles rather than the engine itself. Basically saying that they were calling Epic Games selfish and that they were focusing
more on their own titles,
more on Gears and stuff than other game companies were on titles that were using the same engine. But again,
wow, big wow. I don't know, maybe,
yeah.
No, they'll get their comeuppance.
So within a month of this lawsuit basically getting out there, we were soon going to learn that Epic was not going to take it sitting down.
No.
And so at this point, it was revealed, Austin, what did Epic Games do?
So 1 month later, in August, like Randy said, Epic's decided to countersue Silicon Knights. Rather than just defend themselves.
Yeah.
They said, no. You're wrong. You violated your contract, and you're paying us.
Yes.
So Epic claimed that the contract stated that in writing that Unreal 3 engine was still in development when they signed the contract, and that it would still be in development while both games, Gears of War and 2 Human, were being made. Direct quote from Epic states, Silicon Knights knew when it committed to the licensing agreement that Unreal Engine 3 may not meet its requirements and may not be modified to meet them. ...
You fuckers.
Yeah. So they're saying that if it's later decided that Unreal Engine 3 is not what you need to make 2 Human, don't sue us.
Yeah.
Because it says in the contract that if it doesn't meet your requirements, we're not going to modify it to meet them.
Just imagine somebody at Epic Games getting the phone call, they're getting sued, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Here's the important part of this whole thing. Like I stated, at the time that the lawsuit was filed, Silicon Knights had already abandoned Unreal 3.
Yeah.
And they had decided to make their own Silicon Knights engine.
Which I didn't know until I fucking looked up the box for this game.
Yeah.
I was looking at the box art for the front and back, and I was like, where's the Unreal fucking logo? And it's not on it.
The interesting thing is, if you look it up now, it says that 2 Human was developed on the Unreal Engine. And we'll get to why.
That's what fooled me. Yeah.
We'll get to why later.
Yeah.
But
we will.
I guess we'll get to it right now. Epic claimed that this new engine infringed on its own copyrights. These included stolen code, trade secrets, industry know-how, and other insider information.
Yeah, so basically they already had access to it. So like, well, that works pretty good.
Yes.
That works pretty good.
They fucking repurposed it and reused it for their own.
Part of the licensing agreement is that you get the source code to Unreal Engine 3.
Right.
Because a lot of developers who are good at their jobs
have to
find ways to modify the engine,
it.
but you still pay Epic the fee.
Yeah.
If you read a lot about the development of BioShock Infinite, which used Unreal 3,
Yes.
You'll read that they use a significantly modified version of Unreal 3 in order to get that game to look and run as good as it does.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still, they still paid Unreal, or they still paid Epic to use Unreal, and they still put the logo at the beginning of the
Here's
game.
the fucking crazy
It
thing,
saves a
though.
lot of
Like,
work.
they already signed a deal saying that was the engine that they were going to use exclusively. So, like, even if they fucking didn't steal, they were already breaching contract.
Yeah.
Like, they just shot themselves in both feet rather than one.
Silicon Knights had also violated its contract by making a deal with Sega to begin development on a new title. And they had begun using their modified version of Unreal 3 without paying Epic Games another licensing fee. So they're saying...
But we named it different.
This is the part where Randy's talk about them using Unreal for all games in this generation comes into play.
Yeah.
Because...
That's what I was about to say.
Part of that deal was every time you develop a game, you use our engine and you pay us a licensing fee. And the second game they made that generation was a game with Sega, and they started using Unreal 3, a modified version of it, without paying Epic a licensing fee. Here's the interesting part, and we'll get to the end of the lawsuit a little later, but this is an interesting tidbit I wanted to insert here that came out during the trial. Silicon Knights actually didn't deny that they took code.
Oh, really?
They said that they took mathematical formulas, and they said that mathematical formulas are not protected under U.S. copyright law. You can't copyright mathematical formulas.
Wow. Well, that makes sense, I guess.
But
if you could use 2 words to describe computer code, which 2 would you use?
Mathematical formulas. But they claimed that
Zero
it was...
and ones owned
They
by
claimed that
everybody.
in the mass amount of code that they were delivered when they got the Unreal source code, they claimed that they used less than 0.5% of that code in their own engine. Epic said, that doesn't sound right. Some people did some investigating, and it turned out it was closer to 20%.
Yeah.
Or
Big
one
dip.
or 1/5 of the source code.
Yeah, which is a
from
much
Unreal
bigger
Engine
deal.
3, which is a much, much bigger deal.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that even though they were being accused of stealing code in their new engine, they decided, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just keep using the engine. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass it back over to Randy to talk about the continued use of the stolen engine.
So, literally, while all this stuff was going on, they were like, let's make another game.
Yeah, let's get out there.
Let's get out there. So they made a
Gotta
game.
move the stolen code, boy.
This was, they developed, have you heard of a game called X-Men Destiny?
No.
No?
No, wait, is it
probably
like a
better
top-down?
Yes.
Kind of, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
then, yeah. Or like isometric, not top-down.
Yes,
Yeah.
this was actually one of the first games I ever red boxed because this game came out around the time that they started to get out there. But X-Men Destiny was a beat-em-up action RPG based on the X-Men comics and characters, obviously. They even credited a major writer of said comics as a collaborator. But they made this deal with Activision in 2009 as the publisher when they held the Marvel license at the time for video games. This was before, all the changes with that stuff and Disney and all that. But this game, as also mentioned, this was also using that code from the 2 Human engine, modified Unreal shit.
Yeah.
But anonymous claims from employees came out stating during that the development team was split, actually, between that game and the not yet announced or named Eternal Darkness 2. With most of their management team feeling pretty indifferent towards X-Men Destiny. Everybody on staff wanted to work on Eternal Darkness. They didn't give a shit about this crappy X-Men game. This was like, this is pretty much their commercial tie-in that they were just like, hey, maybe we'll make some money from this, funnel that into Eternal Darkness. That was the thing that a lot of fans wanted. Not that Eternal Darkness was like a huge seller, but that was the most passionate that gamers felt about the projects that they've put out so far.
Yeah, exactly.
But Dennis Dyack responded with this, saying that the budget on the project was drastically reduced due to Marvel's acquisition by Disney in 2009, when I was mentioned. So, like, it's funny that, like, Activision held the Marvel license when I'm sure that, like, all those deals were made prior to this game, like, starting development. And in the middle, that deal happened. But
so wait, you're telling me Disney bought something and then it went wrong afterwards, or things got worse?
I know.
Never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Remember Lucasfilm? No, so he went on. He asserted this point pretty hard. Like, he continued to assert that the perception of the indifference had to do with the resources, like, at the developer being reallocated in response to that shift in budget.
Yeah.
The team was not informed of this to maintain morale. So, like, higher ups at the company knew about the budget of the game suddenly being slashed. All the poor schmucks that, all the code monkeys, no idea. Despite this, development still continued, and X-Men Destiny was officially released on September 27th, 2011. And it was released on the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, the Wii, and the Nintendo DS, with them even doing the handheld version. Usually most studios...
So it never came up that the budget was slashed. It didn't matter, I guess?
I mean, I think they just more were like, I'm sure people found out, but it was never really made... Like, the scale of the game just kept getting reduced, and, until eventually it was just like, we got to get this thing out the door. It also received pretty universally poor reviews.
Yeah. Makes sense.
With scores for each version falling somewhere between a 47 and a 33% on Metacritic.
Classic.
With most reviewers drawing attention to the sluggish and button-mashy gameplay, its short campaign, and complete lack of polish. In other words,
garbage.
Bad game.
Unfinished.
It's almost like his budget was reduced steadily until it was forced out the door.
Yeah.
God, it's the worst.
Yeah.
When are we going to just unite and cut off all their fucking heads? Like, we just need to make something happen. All right, I'm officially changing this podcast. We're now a revolutionary podcast.
Finally.
Kotaku's Andrew McMillan tried to explore this outcome by publishing an article entitled "What Went Wrong with Silicon Knights X-Men Destiny." His story uncovered allegations from 8 different anonymous sources from within the company that Dennis Dyack actually mistreated employees during this development.
What?
Yeah. McMillan sought out responses from Dyack, but none of the members of Silicon Knights' management team responded to his request for comment at the time.
Was he too busy being a sexist?
Yeah, he really was. But this was a great article to check out if you really want to go deep behind the scenes at Silicon Knights. During this time specifically, Dennis was frequently called by people working around him as being power hungry, but also aloof and disconnected from actually making great games. They seemed like he wanted to be this figurehead who was out there making these announcements and these claims, almost like a Peter Molyneux type figure, but not really like.
What if this guy's ever got a drink?
But not really, being in close touch with the people that that matter when you're working on titles like this. Yeah. He was also accused of souring relationships with other publishers, which is kind of funny when you think about the history of Silicon Knights. That pretty major people working with them, but people didn't continue to work with them for long.
Yeah. You keep Microsoft's,
Yeah,
Sega,
so it's like I can't imagine all these people feeling this seemed like a risky partner essentially. It's like after this stuff, none of this stuff was a secret that was going on with Epic Games and Microsoft. You have to imagine Activision just being like, whoa, but it is what it is.
Nobody wants to be
him.
friends with the guy who steals your lunch and then takes out the ham and goes, "I'm gonna sell this lunch." It wasn't your lunch.
It seemed like
you want this.
It seemed like he was hands on the wrong stuff, hands off on the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
But he went on, kind of still continuing to spout the what his company was going to do and the things that they were going to change. But here's where everything kind of stops working out for him.
Good.
There was on May 30th, 2012, Epic Games prevailed in the lawsuit and officially won its countersuit
Yeah.
against Silicon Knights for $4.45 million, with an injury award that was later doubled due to prejudgment interest, attorneys' fees, and costs. Now, Austin has a breakdown of exactly how much they lost and where this all went. So why don't you take it from here and let everybody know where that sweet Two Human money was going.
So I have $9 million Epic was owed. This was $4.5 million in damages, as Randy said. $2.3 million in prejudgment interest, which is basically interest. Interest accrues the longer a case goes on. So since they dragged it out from 2007 all the way up to 2012, they had to pay basically 5 years of interest.
Jeez.
Another $2.1 million in attorney's fees and another $278,000 in costs.
On them, essentially.
Yeah, I mean they got shit on.
Now, consistent with Epic's counterclaims, the presiding judge, named James C. Denver III,
Classic.
stated that Silicon Knights had, quote, deliberately and repeatedly copied thousands of lines of Epic Games copyrighted code, and then attempted to conceal its wrongdoing by removing Epic Games copyright notices and by disguising Epic Games copyrighted code as Silicon Knights' own. Evidence against Silicon Knights was labeled as being overwhelming, said the judge.
Yeah, I was about to say, he just said it about as good as anybody could have said.
Pretty fucking open and shut case for him.
I remember reading something about they found a misspelling in the code that was still there.
Brilliant.
Or something like that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It was he stated that it was not only copied functional code but also non-functional internal comments from Epic Games programmers that had left for themselves, like little personal notes for them. Like
for those of you that are not programmers, you can write stuff in the code and then put a little thing before it that you leave notes for other programmers that get into the code.
Nice.
So
there were a lot of
Jan,
comments.
don't touch my lunch in the fridge.
There were a lot of comments in there that they left in that some guy at Epic was like, "Yeah, I wrote that," and then I think that's where one of the misspellings was.
The third floor women's bathroom needs the toilet paper changed.
Yeah,
it's all in there.
I was just thinking, wouldn't it be funny if they like stole it and then they were like, "We're remaking our own because yours sucks," and then it still didn't work.
And now, as a result of this, Silicon Knights was forced in November of that year to recall and destroy all unsold copies of their Unreal Engine games, including Two Human and X-Men Destiny. And this also included the many unreleased projects that were still internally in development at the time, such as a game called The Sandman, based on Neil Gaiman's DC comic, The Box, which was an open-world horror title heavily rumored to be the next Silent Hill game at the time, until changes to the publisher, Konami, led it to be known as The Ritualist. That was the game that they brought to the aforementioned Sega, which is, the other nail in the coffin.
And later apparently tried to pitch it to THQ also.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, a third game called Siren and the Maelstrom. Kind of a cool title, but not much was ever really revealed about that game.
Yeah, most of these sound like crap. What about Eternal Darkness 2?
Well, I will get to that. Eternal Darkness 2 didn't end up well for them either. In January of the next year, by the way, Two Human officially removed from all digital fronts across all platforms, while X-Men Destiny hung out on the shelf for another year. It was eventually taken down on January 1st, 2014, as per that 2012 lawsuit, as well as the then loss of Marvel's rights from Activision.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think I remember seeing X-Men Destiny when I worked at GameStop. Like,
Yeah.
I remember seeing
You were
it.
like, what's this piece of shit? I can put my coffee on it. So here's basically we're gonna get to this is the I'm gonna read off the grave of Silicon Knights here. So even before that X-Men game was delisted, it was revealed in 2013 that Silicon Knights was also involved in a dispute with Ontario's Federal Economic Development Agency. They received apparently a loan of around $4 million back in 2010 for the development of a new mainstream video game that would create more than 65 new jobs. Repayment was scheduled around the time that this news broke, but the Ontario government officials refused to disclose any information to the media regarding.
Yeah.
So they had ambitions.
Yeah, exactly.
They were on track to do big things, and did not work out for them. Shortly after this, Silicon Knights filed a new appeal in the Epic Games case, with the closure of the company being announced to the press in May of 2013.
Best move they've done yet.
Yeah, so technically at this point, Silicon Knights had not yet filed for bankruptcy, and the studio's chief financial officer, Mike Mays, insisted that the studio was definitely still alive. My air quotes, not getting bigger. But Austin can tell us a little bit about this appeal that they tried to do here, and how you can probably guess how that went out for them.
Okay, yeah. So they tried to appeal the lawsuit on a couple claims. Disclaimer: not a lawyer.
Yeah.
In order to figure out exactly.
You're not?
No, I'm not.
Why'd you represent me in that?
In order to figure out exactly what they appealed, I had to read court documents, and somehow did not shoot myself.
Yeah, me and Chris looked at your screen for a second, and we're like, nope.
I'll leave the law to the fancy lawman.
So it boils down to essentially Silicon Knights came out and were like, that was unfair. You were on their side the whole time, and you helped them win.
We just did little stealsies, not big ones.
They argued that they were misrepresented in their fraud. They argued that
Yeah, their lawyers lied to them, and then they took 1/4 of their lawyer's, defense plan and rewrote the rest of it and then tried to win the case.
they also had expert testimony. You remember before how I told
Air
you?
quotes on that,
Yes.
by the way, yeah.
Remember before how I
A
told
lot of air
you that
quotes
you
going
could
on.
you could go online and find a bunch of people bitching about their jobs and how hard Unreal 3 was to use.
Yeah.
Silicon Knights tried to bring some of these people into the courtroom as quote-unquote expert witnesses and explain how hard Unreal 3 was, to be like, see, it's not just us. But the court dismissed this evidence as hearsay because people's opinions about how shitty their jobs are not admissible in court.
All right, here we are. Next testimony from Jews Did Flat Earth. He said he used to work with Unreal, and it was horrible. He said it was real hard to work with.
They also tried to appeal how much they had to pay Epic. Like Randy said, it started out as about $4.45 million and then was more than doubled to $9 million. The court said that the original $4.5 million claim was profit generated as a result of the use of infringed code. So that was estimated profits for X-Men Destiny and 2 Human.
Yeah.
But then it was later doubled because Epic was entitled to, quote, recover both the actual damage suffered as a result of the infringement and any profits the infringer gained by infringing. So that's the reason it was doubled, because they got paid damages and then they got paid any profits that 2 Human and X-Men Destiny made using the infringed code.
And the judge was like, I don't like your dumb face. Also.
Do you want to take how the outcome of this appeal went?
Yeah, so this definitely still alive studio that they claimed So, by the way, this also got out. An unnamed source around this time told Polygon that most of the company's employees were already laid off back in mid of 2012.
Yeah.
While Dyack, along with a core group of now ex-employees, secretly went on to form a new company called Precursor Games around the same time. A company that Mr. Dyack became the chief creative officer of, which he finally addressed this change following the closure via an announcement on the Silicon Knights official forums with a post reading. I'm going to read this verbatim here. It has been a very long time. I am sorry I was away so long. It was not intended, and I truly regret that I could not interact with you all. I wanted to do so, but it simply was not an option for me at this time. I really hope you can understand. As most of you already probably have seen, I am no longer at Silicon Knights, and I joined Precursor Games some time ago. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish with the community and our crowdsourcing campaigns. I do see that some people are disappointed at the way things turned out. So was I, and many others, believe me. Many fans and members of the site did not take to this well.
Yeah.
Because, you know what he did? He ran out to do a Kickstarter. But while he did this, he was asked by many people to respond to that now year-old Kotaku article, the one mentioning all the shitty work conditions at his company and basically what the fuck happened with that last piece of crap game. And the Precursor, this new company started, their CEO, Paul Caporisi, I don't know. He was the one who said, you got to respond to these allegations. We can't go off and start a new company with this stuff still sitting there. So Dennis Dyack made a video, and it was created directly addressing the allegations published by Kotaku, as well as the additional allegations that spread across the internet, unrelated to that original piece. In the video, he claimed that Kotaku had accused him of embezzling funds. Kotaku, of course, came out and they were like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
There was no claims of that in that report at all.
Yeah. Here's the article.
Yeah, it's still fucking there.
It's still there.
There were other original sources that did say that, but like during the production of that article, but that's not where that came from. And you know what's a real good way to make yourself look guilty? Doing that, being like, "Yo, I didn't steal from that bank," and then everybody being like, "Wait, we never said
what?
that you did."
What
but
bank?
I guess now that we looked it up, you totally did. Yeah, and so they continue to go along with this this campaign here. It was official on May 3rd, 2013. By the way, there are other games still fucking being taken down and all this shit. They went and announced an official crowdfunding campaign through PayPal, seeking $1.5 million to finally create that now announced spiritual successor to Eternal Darkness. They said what happened to Eternal Darkness 2, under the title Shadow of the Eternals, to be released on PC and Wii U in 12 2 to 4 hour long episodes. So this was going to be that switch, like this was going to be that sequel that everybody finally wanted.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. 10 days later, a secondary fundraising campaign was launched on Kickstarter. That first one was just on their website. The second one was on Kickstarter and aimed to receive $1.35 million within 36 days. Being only halfway through their funding campaign in early June, the company suddenly claimed a host of new exciting opportunities that will make the game better than we envisioned, and shut down both campaigns. They shut down both funding campaigns, on the one on their website and the one on Kickstarter, and refunded all the accumulated money that they got back to contributors, and promised to relaunch a whole new campaign a few weeks later, the one that would reveal more about these exciting new developments. And this is where the story kind of gets sort of dark, unfortunately.
It's getting dark now.
Yeah. So late in June, Precursor's founding member and co-designer of both Eternal Darkness and Shadow of the Eternals, Kenneth McCulloch, was arrested and pleaded guilty on charges of child pornography.
Got him.
He was also an artist on Too Human. I don't know if he worked in X-Men Destiny, but the studio at this point immediately severed all ties with him completely.
Yeah, good move.
Good move. I could get into details on the crime, but I won't.
Because then you'll be a child molester, right? That's how that works.
But he was
sorry.
He was a longtime artist and friend of the company, and unfortunately responsible for one of my favorite games ever made. So
oh, that's rough. Dude. I'm sorry.
That was a little devastating to me. So, not letting that get them down, they launched a third campaign to fund this game again. They did this on July 25th, a month after this arrest
Eternal
happened.
Darkness 2, now with more less child molesters.
And this time, they scaled their goal down to $750,000. And instead of 12 episodes, the game was only going to be one 8 to 10 hour experience. They went on to show a 9-minute gameplay trailer of the game, seeming kind of promising. And in creating the look of the game, they even went out and bought art assets from the now almost dead Silicon Knights, which were going to be used on the original Eternal Darkness sequel before it was canceled.
Wait, that company was still around?
It was still around. It was
It's like
zombied.
I was about to say, it's just like some dead body in the trash.
Yeah, and they went to go pick some
go grab
pieces
those
off of it.
Polaroids out of his pocket real quick.
They and it was funny, although Nintendo still owned the rights to that original game, as well as the patent for the game's unique sanity meter, which I didn't bring up earlier, but that was the game that had that basically like coined the whole thing of like once your character was losing sanity, the game would fuck with you in some crazy ways. It would like pull up messages on the screen that it was like wiping your memory card and unplugging your controller. It was really fucking
Nice,
cool. It
that's
was
pretty
crazy
cool.
at the time.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Like playing that on an old CRT TV in my basement, the TV would like change channels and like change the volume up and down. It looked like there were bugs on the screen, and I remember like trying to move bugs off my screen. It was really convincing back then. It was super fucking cool.
That is really cool.
But Nintendo, they're still holding on to that. Not doing anything with it, but they held on to it. Precursor Games, the head, that dude Paul, can't pronounce his last name, stated that the studio was still in constant communication with Nintendo at this time, who were supportive of the game. Despite all this, what happened with that one guy, this ended up being their kind of lowest funded campaign.
Yeah.
Basically yet. That Shadow of the Eternals game failed all 3, 4, I don't know, of its crowdfunding campaigns, and due to lack of funding, led to the project being placed on an indefinite hold and the demise of the newly formed Precursor Games in September of 2013.
Jeez.
The Escapist went on to say that what seemed like The Escapist magazine commented on that by saying, what seemed like a fairly obvious slam dunk sequel to a classic game has instead been a circus of multiple failed crowdfunding campaigns, child pornography, and outright lack of faith in developers. It certainly must be a discouraging experience for everyone involved, but that's the double-edged blade of crowdfunding. The crowds occasionally just, unfortunately, do not want your game.
That sword coming back.
Yeah. Somebody pulled that Silicon Knight sword out. Turns out it had a two-sided blade.
Kyle Hillard of Game Informer also wrote that despite good intentions and the excitement surrounding the prospect of a sequel to the once great Eternal Darkness, Shadow of the Eternals has been plagued with issues since its original announcement. It's disappointing, but not too surprising that Precursor has decided to put the game on hold. I would still like to see the final game someday, but I'm not confident that we will be seeing or even hearing about the game anytime soon. Then, a year later, on May 16th, 2014, following the loss of all those court cases, the zombied Silicon Knights officially filed for bankruptcy, and a circuit of appointment was issued by the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, putting this all to an end. And that is pretty much the end of the story of Silicon Knights. But for Dennis Dyack, he's still trying. This seemed like the end until late of that year in 2014. Dyack announced the formation of another company called Quantum Entanglement Entertainment Incorporated.
What a bad name.
Yes, such a bad name.
with the aim of restarting production on the Shadow of Eternals, as well as potentially expanding the IP into movies and television.
Classic.
Yes.
He does not need money at all at this point, right?
As of this recording, late 2018, nothing has come out of this. Which is funny. It's funny that he wants to try and get into movies and TV. Initially, Eternal Darkness actually had a bunch of like independent film stuff around it, which was pretty interesting.
Nice.
But they were like trying to basically like incorporate other art mediums into like the release of this game. But I don't think it's gonna work this time. I think his career is donezo. All right, so with Silicon Knights now dead and buried in the ground, what
Nobody
happened?
buried him. They just found the body. Ugh.
They poked him in the
Walked
stick
away.
for a little while. Our winners of the case anyway at Epic Games. What happened to them? They faded into obscurity, right?
Oh, they're winners. All right. So despite the supposed development trouble with the numerous people that Silicon Knights apparently had to shit on Unreal Engine 3, many games came out on Unreal Engine 3. It was a widespread engine. Probably one of the most important video game things of that generation.
Oh yeah.
Powering games such as the Mass Effect trilogy, Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2, Mirror's Edge, all the Mortal Kombat and Injustice games, Batman Arkham Asylum and its sequel, Borderlands and its sequel, Dishonored, BioShock Infinite, XCOM, Life is Strange, and Rocket League.
All
To name a few. There are a lot
all
more.
indie titles.
And on top of this, we also have the numerous Gears of War sequels, as well as other games Epic developed, like Shadow Complex.
Oh yeah.
And they even got the engine running on iOS and Android and released games like Infinity Blade and its sequels. I think there are like 4 of them. But yeah, Epic Games continued to find success with Unreal. So much so that they spawned other competitors. One of the biggest competitors ended up being Unity,
Yeah.
who you may have heard of.
Yeah.
And Unity decided that there was a different way to do this thing. Rather than licensing out their engine during development, they realized that in order to court indie developers who didn't have the money to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy an engine at the start of development, they would offer Unity up for free or for a very small licensing fee, depending on the size of the project, and then they would just take a cut of the profits later. Epic decided that this was a great idea. So at around, I think, 2012, they decided to make Unreal Engine 3 free to use. And then in 2014, its successor, Unreal 4, came out, and that engine was included in their launcher, which at the time a lot of people were like, why do you have a launcher? Of course, now we all have it on our computers to play Fortnite. But if you take some time from dabbing on the haters in Fortnite and click over a few tabs, you will see that you too can download the Unreal client and make your own video game.
Yep. My roommate.
If you find enough
That's what
time
John's doing.
between Fortnite matches. But yeah, they changed the whole game. So this day and age, you wouldn't think that like any lawsuits would come up over the use of Unreal 4 anymore. There was no legal contract. It was a terms of service. It was like agreeing on iTunes now. Anybody can download Unreal 4. I have it downloaded on my computer. I tried to make something with it. It's hard to use. But yeah, now it's use our engine, use it as much as you want. But if you release a game with it, we get a cut of your profits.
Yeah.
And you got to put our logo in the front of it.
Yeah.
And
Seems fair.
And that's the same with Unity, you said too, right? Like
Yes.
that's their-
Unity
Yes.
has the logo in the beginning, and I think like you can pay for that to get removed.
you can
as
pay
well,
for it to
right?
get removed, yeah. But yeah, and you know, here we are, 2018, 4 years later. A lot of games came out using Unreal 4. One such game you may have heard of, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, is made using the Unreal 4 engine.
Is that the Fortnite for losers? Is that what that one is?
Yeah, that's the bad Fortnite. If you ever played Fortnite and thought, what if this ran worse and didn't have all those cool costumes
I think
in
that
it?
a lot.
Yeah. In May of 2018, Epic Games was brought to court once again This time by the newly formed PUBG Corp, a subsidiary
That same
of
guy answers
Bluehole.
the phone. He's like, dude, really? I bet you want to know what I did to the last guy that fucking tried
Yeah.
this shit?
You're not far off.
Yeah.
So this time, PUBG Corp was arguing that Epic was infringing on its copyrights, saying that everything in Fortnite was stolen. It was also rumored...
Because, both games, hugely original idea that they came
Yeah.
up with.
It was rumored that the PUBG Corp also had very similar complaints to that of Silicon Knights. They thought that, Epic... They didn't like the person who made their engine having a direct competitor to them made on said engine. They thought there was a lot of opportunity there. They never accused Epic of doing this, but they thought there was a lot of opportunity there for Epic to make enhancements to the engine to make the battle royale genre run better and hold them back.
And that
from
only
PUBG.
happened because Fortnite got popular.
Yeah.
Otherwise they wouldn't have cared.
Yeah.
Because the actual Fortnite game was in development for forever.
Yes.
Oh yeah, exactly. And
wasn't until
wasn't
the save
PUBG
the
already
world-
the most played game fucking ever on the computer before Fortnite even really
Yeah.
started
Oh,
getting
yeah.
its pick up? Yeah.
Fortnite started development after PUBG got really popular.
Yeah.
Well, Fortnite
It got
Battle
relabeled. Yeah,
Fortnite
Battle
Battle
Royale.
Royale
Battle Royale,
started
yeah,
development.
yeah.
Fortnite's been in development since 2009 or 2010 or something like that.
Yeah, you can
Um,
still buy the boxed version of that game that doesn't have the Battle Royale mode mentioned on it.
But the PUBG Corp wised up. The lawsuit was dropped due to a number of factors. Number one being
It was stupid.
Epic's,
you guys are
Epic's
dumb.
got a lot of lawyers, and they've proven themselves in the past. Also,
I gotta win this case. My son plays Fortnite. If it goes away, I'm fucked. He's gonna have anything to do on his iPad while I'm neglecting him and his mother.
I'll lose custody.
there's a giant company in Asia who you may have heard of named Tencent.
Tencent, yeah.
Yes. Who, right around the time Unreal 4 came out, decided, why would we keep paying Epic to use Unreal when we can just buy Epic? So Tencent bought Epic. Tencent also bought Bluehole, makers of PUBG.
Yeah.
The people way on high called and said, "Hey, idiot, you're suing
yourself. We own you both. That's the equivalent of the dad picking up the two sons that are fighting and by their shirts and mashing them together.
Yeah.
yeah.
Except he bought them both first.
Yeah.
So the lawsuit was dropped because Tencent didn't like themselves suing themselves. But yeah, Epic is now not only one of the biggest providers of engines to both indie games and to big studios, but they're also one of the biggest companies in the world due to the success of our collective favorite game, the official game of Hot Button, Fortnite.
Pornhub. Oh.
I think I've played Fortnite for a total of
bought-
3.5 minutes.
I bought the dab emote,
How much was it?
$5.
Do you have any regrets?
None.
Just making sure.
Which, now Epic has they can say oh, that big game Fortnite? Yeah, that runs on Unreal 4. The shittier version of it, PUBG, that also runs on Unreal 4. The Radical Heights, the shittier version of PUBG
that Unreal 4 also?
that our former employee made, also Unreal 4. So they're kind of the go-to engine for battle royale games. So they're doing all right now.
Yeah.
So, what did we learn?
Uh,
Other than that one of my favorite games is made by a couple of dipshits and I'll never get a sequel to it.
The thing I learned is that if you want to blame other people for your problems, don't take it to court where you can be proven wrong pretty easily.
Amen to that.
yeah, I don't think there's a better lesson than that one.
Well, thank you for sticking with us, everybody. This has been Hot Button. I know this was a pretty involved story, but thank you
This
for.
was a long one. I got a
Yeah.
little sleepy.
No, wake
Sorry,
up.
we're late night. It's a late night session. You guys don't know, and you're listening in whatever time period world you guys live in.
I'll put out in the footnotes. We'll say exactly what time to start it.
Yeah, for the full experience.
It's exactly 11 p.m. right now.
Yeah.
This is the middle of the day for me. I'm feeling good. I'm waking up now. But come back next week. We will have another exciting topic. Next week's gonna be Good. Don't say what it is.
I was gonna say Fortnite.
It's not Fortnite.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No. You know what we'll keep doing? We'll tell
Buzzwords.
everybody that the next episode's gonna be about Fortnite every episode.
Ooh.
Nah, because that'll just disappoint me.
And
All right,
what
I'm
more
gonna
is there
do
to
the-
talk about?
The Fortnite Skin Hour, where every episode you give me 5 minutes to talk about all the new skins they added to Fortnite.
No. Each episode you do 1 whole hour on a single skin.
So next week we're covering Leisure Suit Larry, right? Damn it, I gave it away. So Chris, why don't you tell the fine people out there where you can find us? Not on Pornhub.
Google.
They shut down Google.
They shut down Google.
No, they shut down
Google Plus.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
My
You got scared for a second. How am I supposed to look up? How am I supposed to blank anything?
Oh, what am I supposed to ask Jeeves now?
You can find us on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find us on Vine.
Yeah,
you
we
can
are
find us
Vine.
on
What's that app where people
Tumblr.
just say where they're smoking weed? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Facebook.
No, you can't find us at hotbutton@siliconights.com. I think that email's still running. No, you can find us Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Hotbuttoncast. You guys want to plug your personal? Are you that vain? I'm Chris I something.
I'm Restart Randy.
Austin Blakesley. That's my Twitter handle, M and name.
And that has been Hot Button. I think you're guys gonna say it with me. That has been Hot Button. Goodbye, everybody.
Hot button.
Take care.
See ya.